All right, my ELA friends, I have a good one for us today, an escape room writing conference. So here's something I've learned over the years. One is that I think the traditional grading paradigm is for the birds. So I've noticed that if I put an ocean of red ink on a student's draft, just a multitude of comments, I'm doing 99% of the heavy lifting. And I think that's an onus that I don't want because it precludes kids from learning. I think that in grading methods, the ratio should be like kids doing 70%, teacher doing 30%, somewhere along those lines, because typically I give the essay back, and a lot of my kids don't even read my comments. They look at my grade and they're like, yeah, Mr. Coon's the man. He's the GOAT. He gave me a 98. I gave him, a 98, or, oh, Mr. Coon's the biggest jerk in the world. He gave me a 72. He hates me, and they personally internalize it. And I also don't like this, that English teachers, it seems, have a hidden clause in their contract that says that we have a bunch of compulsory unpaid overtime. And I don't like that. I don't like taking work home. I like to work my contractual hours. So in my 25-year career, I've developed a lot of alternative grading methods to really put the shift and the onus back on kids so that they take greater accountability and greater authorship over their learning. So this is one that I created just recently. That's pretty cool, and I'll walk you through the whole thing. I'm going to use a rhetorical piece for this, Jim Gaffigan's Food, a Love Story, but you can use it for literary analysis as well. And sit tight. I'll walk you through this, and hopefully it'll take a burden off your shoulders. All right, my ELA friends, let me give you a thorough rundown of my rationale for this. So I say one of the greatest shortcomings of traditional essay grading is that it places nearly all of the onus on the teacher. We read, analyze, diagnose, comment, and score, while students often do little more than glance at the grade. If our goal is to develop stronger writers, the model makes little sense. Writers improve not when someone else evaluates their work, but when they learn to evaluate it themselves. And I think about, how did I become a relatively decent writer? I had to figure it out. I had to tussle with and grapple with the greater concepts and put them into use. And students need to do that. I find that a lot of my students, especially my AP students, have learned helplessness. And they rely on me too much to pick up their learning, and I need for them to carry a heavier load. So it goes on. That said, students cannot meaningfully analyze writing if they lack the vocabulary and frameworks necessary to discuss it. Before students can identify strengths, diagnose weaknesses, and propose revisions, they must first be equipped with clear heuristics. And that's where I'm different than a lot of other teachers. Templates are often used, frames are often used, stems are often used. Know how my heuristics allow you to get away from the traditional grading paradigm. So concrete tools that help them recognize what effective writing looks like. Whether those heuristics involve thesis construction, paragraph organization, evidence integration, commentary development, transitions, or other writing moves, students need a shared language through which they can examine a text. Put simply, students cannot be expected to find what they have never been taught to see. And if you want to do a deep dive on my heuristics, just dabble in my YouTube channel on the writing workshops. And I use heuristics called the declarative and the inverted thesis that I use for introductory paragraphs. And then we always build body paragraphs syllogistically, and the moves are recurring. Like, I expect students to do the same thing given the expository mode over and over and over again. Last piece here. The Writing Conference Escape Room was designed with this principle in mind. Rather than placing all of the onus on the teacher to identify strengths and weaknesses, students work together to dissect an essay, locate its key components, and determine whether those components are functioning effectively. Using crayons to color code elements such as the thesis, premises, evidence, commentary, transitions, and class heuristics, students create a visual blueprint of the essay while engaging in meaningful discussion about its structure and effectiveness. The activity transforms revision from a passive experience into an active investigation. More importantly, it demonstrates the value of explicit writing instruction. Students are no longer simply receiving feedback, they are applying a set of learned heuristics to evaluate writing for themselves. By the end of the lesson, they have practiced the very skill that mature writers use constantly, the ability to critically examine a piece of writing and determine how it can be improved, right? And I Bob Ross a lot for my students, meaning I get to the proverbial easel and canvas and I write with and for them. So I model this all the time. I'm not a flawless, perfect, immaculate writer. It requires a lot of revision and a lot of thought. So I'm just modeling that for them. And another little piece to this, in order to run the workshop, I have my kids print their essays before the start of class so that they're equipped with a copy of it for the writing workshop. So here's an overview. In this whole class writing workshop, students become literary detectives or rhetorical detectives tasked with escaping an essay. Armed with crayons and a set of writing heuristics, the class must work together to crack a series of locks hidden within an anonymous student paper. So there's no names on the paper. As students identify and color code elements such as the thesis, premises, evidence, commentary, transitions, and class heuristics, they gradually uncover the essay's strengths, weaknesses, and areas for revision. Unlike traditional peer editing, which often results in vague feedback and surface-level observations, the writing conference escape room requires students to justify every decision using the language and frameworks taught throughout the course. Each successfully completed challenge unlocks the next stage of the investigation until the entire essay has been dissected and mapped. By the end of the activity, students have not only revised a piece of writing, but also strengthen their ability to analyze, evaluate, and improve their own work. So I'm in a district where we have all read the inequities of grading, and we have grading practices like this. So we have an incomplete policy. So if students miss a required assessment, we don't fail them. We give them an incomplete, and then it seems like they have infinity to get it done. I know it's kind of an inane concept. The other is that kids can revise as many times as they want to raise their grades. And I require them to go through these workshops and these peer edits before they revise. Otherwise, it's just a couple of commas fixed here and there. And they're like, why didn't I get 100, Mr. Kuhn? And I don't want that. So the thing I want to really hearken is this. I've only seen this work well when heuristics are used. I'm not sure if it would work with templates. Let me know in the comments below if it does. But I'm not absolutely positive of that. As I've already alluded to, we're using Jim Gaffigan's Food, a Love Story. So I ran this with my AP language class. All right, first things first. If you look at the prompts for FRQ2 on the AP Lang exam, FRQ1 and FRQ2 on the AP Literature exam, there's a hack that I like to use. All the prompts are asking kids two questions. So implicit in those prompts are two questions. How does the author construct meaning, and what is the author's intent? You'll notice that I have a 3 and a 1 next to each one of those. In rhetorical analysis, we do a declarative thesis. So you're going to riff 3 sentences on construction of meaning, and that's where you want to dabble in your terms, devices, techniques. 1 sentence is going to be addressed to the author's intent. So if we break that down into a diagram, it would look like this. It's a classic 3+1. There are some bit parts in here that are part of the heuristic that I want to see. Students need to start with a duo, and I'll unpack that in just a second. I have 3 examples to show you. I want to see a fair amount of tier 2 level vocabulary, and what I mean by that is just your average run-of-the-mill SAT level caliber words. I really don't want them to geek out. I want them to stay in their vocal registrar. So sometimes kids go too colloquial and vernacular. Sometimes kids stretch their vocabulary way too far, that they sound pedantic or contrived. I do a lot of work on sentence constructs with my students, and in my YouTube channel, I have a glut of videos on the 12 sentence types and the 20 sentence patterns. This is essential for voice rhythm and flow, especially early in the academic year. I notice that students will use a lot of independent clauses, and it creates a chop, 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 chop kind of flow and rhythm to it. And then mechanics and clarity are what we're looking for in the intro. So here are the rules, all right? I have crayons in my room. I just got them from Dollar General, and super cheap. And I just have a big, massive collection of crayons. So with the gray, I want them to begin with a duo. And I say this to them: exceptional writers often launch an essay with a pair of carefully chosen descriptors that immediately establish tone and complexity or tension. So here are some examples. You could begin poignant yet blunt. Do you see that? 1 poignant, blunt 2. That's what I mean by a duo. Brutally honest 1 and heartfelt 2. Ironic 1 and slightly hyperbolic 2, etc. So I'm asking if the kids have a duo, and does it get to the essence of the piece? Have they read it correctly? Do the words complement or complicate one another? Does the pairing accurately ascertain the text? So we'll be looking at that. Green is the author's intent. So highlight all sentences that explain what the author is trying to accomplish. Your introduction should contain 3 sentences focused on the author's purpose, message, argument, lesson, or insight. Ask, what is the author attempting to convey? What larger truth is being explored? Have I avoided mere summary? If you have fewer than 3 green sentences, you cannot escape. You got to revise that. Blue is the construction of meaning, and we want 3 sentences for that. So students might say, through the strategic use of, by juxtaposing, through vivid imagery, by employing, right? How does the author build meaning? What choices help communicate the message? And every introduction must contain blue sentences. Yellow, active verbs, right? So I want them to get away from says, shows, tells, talks about, to strong verbs like illustrates, critiques, emphasizes, underscores, reinforces, challenges, conveys. Purple is going to be the varied sentence constructs. So one of the things that I notice early in the academic year is that sentence openers tend to be weak. A lot of students begin with the and this. Instead, I want them to consider through, while, although, by, beneath, rather than. And also in sentence constructs, I've taught them the 12 sentence types and the 20 sentence pattern. So we're looking for things like parenthetical statements, adjective clauses. I tell my students that repetition is the bane of the author's existence, and this is true of sentences. You don't want to parallel your sentences to create that droning, monotonous tone. Orange is clarity of expression. So highlight any sentence that feels confusing, wordy, or overly academic. Would a classmate understand this immediately? Am I trying to sound smart instead of being clear? Can I shorten the sentence without losing meaning? So I always tell them, clear writing is sophisticated writing. Red is danger zones, like plot summary, topic announcements. This essay is about throughout history. Like, I hate those ubiquitous broad openings. Since the dawn of time, in today's society. Do they have any repetition? Empty academic language, filler language. So every red mark requires revision. Brown is going to be grammar, punctuation, and syntax. I do a lot of work early in the academic year with this. So I just want them to be exacting editors and make sure that their peers' work is up to snuff. So this is the escape room requirements. So to escape, you have to have all of those things in play. So here is example number 1. It says, playfully and deliberately, Gaffigan articulates the perspective of an Edie, someone who must have the allure and physique to give food advice. He presents this by using rhetorical questions and juxtaposition, which not only states the characteristics of a person credible enough to give opinions, but also ties in his own ethos. By proceeding syllogistically and humbly, he sets the foundation for his own credibility. Gaffigan elevates his argument, positioning himself as qualified to give trustworthy insights. So let's take a look at that duo, right? You can see that immediately they start with that. And I think those are 2 good adjectives to anchor us in Gaffigan's piece. In red, I have the active verbs. So articulates, presents, states, sets, elevates, positioning. And in yellow, I have the repetition and the weak verbs. So you can see that they have give 3 times and then using. Using is something that I don't want them to say. It's a very weak verb. I also do exercises to get them away from overusing to be verbs. You can see in green, I have the terms, devices, techniques that are in the construction of meaning. And students have to imply or explicitly state those terms. And I think they did a fair enough job with this in order to get the 3+1. Grammatically, it's all set. There's no mistakes in it. It seems to be pretty good. So that's one of the better ones that my students did. Let's take a look at number 2. Intended for action and a great sense of dietary logic, Jim Gaffigan crafts his opening to compare fat to thin in American food culture. His rhetorical questions invite the audience to reflect on their own eating habits, playfully nudging them toward purchasing his book, Self-Examination. Gaffigan's persona feels as light as a feather, yet his insights pack a punch, creating a delightful conflict between indulgence and restraint. With humor as his weapon, he challenged us to embrace our cravings while navigating the choices on our plates, ultimately urging us to find balance in our culinary adventures. So this one's got quite a bit of things wrong with it. So you can see immediately they don't start with a duo, and it's just kind of awkward phrasing. In the second sentence, they get really plot summative. In terms of the verbs, they got crafts, nudge, navigating, urge. So the verbs at times are decent, but one of the big things that dogs this one is they have some awkward expressions because they get too vernacular, too colloquial with things like light as a feather, pack a punch, right? Humor as his weapon. So I would have them brush that up a little bit. And then the last sentence has a misread in it. And I would want my peer editors to pick up on that sort of stuff. So this student has quite a bit of revision to do. One of the cool things about doing this exercise is that, let's say I have a class of 28 students. I really think that students need to see a lot of writing to become good writers. And through the exercise, they'll probably see about 10, 11, 12 drafts of their peers. So it's good comparison. They can see where they stand in class. And I know I became a halfway decent writer by emulating people who did it better than me. I play guitar, and I do that all the time. I find people that do it better, and I try to emulate them. So here is one last one. Self-assured and comical, Gaffigan ensures to list all the reasons that he's the best fit foodie to hurl food advice. Contrasting 2 body types for his audience, he not only verifies that the juxtaposition is irrefutable, but also shines a light on people's undeniable bias towards one side of the scale. Adding the ingredients of a syllogism, he implements another course to confirm his credibility on the topic. Additionally, while Gaffigan reminds his audience to stray away from society's stereotypical attitudes towards food, he also instills his belief that he's undoubtedly the correct person to speak on such a delectable topic. So the duo seems good. The verbs seem good. But there's a couple of awkward expressions in here. Shines a light, I'm not a big fan of. And then adding the ingredients of a syllogism seems to trip this kid up a little bit. So I would have them work on that. So what we do is, just do intros first, and then first premises, second premises, conclusion, and then get looking at commentary, embedded quotes in the body paragraphs, etc. What's cool about this is that the students do the heavy lifting, and the culminating exercise is this. In 5 sentences, explain what grade you deserve and why. And then the kicker is this: set 3 learning targets for revision. So if you choose to revise, what specifically are you going to do? And the students will submit this to me, and I will see concretely how well they understand the good, the bad, the ugly with regards to their writing. Really good, really eye-opening, and a solid exercise. So that's it for now. If you want to send me an email or just reach out and have a conversation, teachingwritingcoach@gmail.com is the place to go. And I'll keep them coming. I got a whole bunch of other alternative grading methods up my sleeve, and I'll make videos of them in the coming weeks, because I think this is something that's a big area of need for teachers. And I actually want to write some ebooks about my alternative grading practices. So be well for now.